Welcome to this episode of the Bulldog broadcast on the Field of 68 Media Network. I'm the host, Dan Dickow, former Gonzaga player turned analyst. I'm with one of the insiders for this Gonzaga Bulldog season, as well as over the last 10 to 12 years, if I'm not mistaken, the beat writer for the Spokesman Review, Jim Meehan. Jim, thank you for joining.
No problem. I was just writing your name in an article. ESPN's top transfers list. You're in there at number 8, so the timing's perfect.
Yeah, I saw that list today, and I always appreciate when I'm included in different lists of different broadcast publications and articles that are written. I'll just be honest. I was a little surprised Brandon Clark was as high as he was. Not saying I should have been above him, but I think it just shows that, there's been so many good transfers in this Gonzaga program.
Yeah, you could probably make a former University of Washington to Gonzaga transfer list with yourself, with Nigel Williams-Goss, Jeff Brown, Earl Knight. Am I missing anyone? We need a starting 5 there. That's 4 of the 5 right there.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly spot on. I mean, there's been a number of great transfers, but, quickly coming to mind, you mentioned Nigel Williams-Goss. He got Gonzaga to the promised land, someplace that I wish I could have helped get the program to. I know Brandon Clark wish he could have got the program to. He got him to a Final Four in a title game. I think there's a lot of credibility for a lot of guys to be higher on that list, or maybe as us a lot of former Zags kind of think about it, maybe we could all be put on the same list, maybe, or on the same level.
Well, what Nigel did in 1 year was remarkable. All-American. I think he was the academic All-American, one of a select few that Gonzaga has had quite a number of those guys. And just his impact. He still has an impact. He does a camp here every year. People still talk about him and how good he was in the community, as well as what he did on the floor. So he obviously, what he did was as big as any transfer that came in.
Yeah, I would agree. He's been tremendous in continuing to impact this Spokane basketball community. I want to stay on the topic of one and dones, because Brandon Clark was a one and done in Spokane, even though he had a redshirt year. Nigel Williams-Goss was a one and done. We've had two normal one and dones. Zach Collins, Jalen Suggs. It looks as if we're going to have our third in Chet Holmgren. What have you seen from Chet Holmgren in your first couple months with him being a part of the team where you're covering it on a day-to-day basis?
Well, he's kind of made the impact I think everybody thought he would on the defensive end. He is so long, and his timing, his ability to block shots, but it's not the number of blocks. To me, it's how many shots get steered off course or get redirected, or guys don't even try them because they know he's kind of lurking in there. So I think the defensive ends where he's made his biggest impact. Offensively, probably fair to say he's a work in progress. He's had big games. I think he had 15 the other night in the last game. He came through in the second half against Duke pretty well at the offensive end. He shoots the 3 ball. You can see when he shoots it, he's got a pretty stroke. He's an accomplished 3-point shooter. He just hasn't hit it at times in the biggest games. I think that'll come. I mean, when you got a stroke like that, it's just a matter of time. He can get on the glass. He can pass, he can hit the 3, he can stretch, he can do all those things we heard about that he could do. But I think the best thing about him, much like Suggs, is they are all invested in the team. That's all they talk about. If you follow their social media, like Chet's, he's tweeting and Instagramming about other guys on the team, not himself. And that's how he talks about team goals and not necessarily himself. And I think he means it, which is even more important. So I think he doesn't, in that same regard, he does not force shots. I can't think of 5 shots he's forced all year, if that. In fact, there's a couple he's turned down. I think he ought to shoot. But I think his offensive game will keep coming. His defensive game will be there and get better as well. Again, by March, with the young guys they have, If they're all on the same page, they're going to be right in the mix.
Yeah, I've said that from the start of the season with the first broadcast that I've had with our regional crew is the talent is off the charts, but it's not a finished product as much as last season's was when the first game tipped. This year, there's going to be growing pains, growing curves, learning opportunities, film sessions, breakdowns of different good and bad scenarios. And I think Coach Few has had to go through all of that early on. There's two losses on the season to two really good teams, Duke and Alabama, who should not have been ranked 16th or 18th or whatever it was when they lost that game. What do you tell people that follow your writing closely for Gonzaga when they say, "Oh, this program, I don't know what to think"? That they're all up in arms because of two losses to two great programs.
Yeah, every loss is kind of met with gloom and doom around Gonzaga. It's could become a tradition, almost as much as them making the NCAA tournament. But I think what maybe threw people off a little bit is they were so good early. What they did to Texas, I did not expect that. Texas has got a bunch of older guys. I know they're transfers, but they're still guys who've played a ton of basketball. And they took them apart. They're up 20 in the first half, and then they did the same thing to UCLA, another experienced team that the ZAGS saw back in Indianapolis in that overtime classic. So when they kind of handled those two teams, and that's a top five and a top two, I think, at the time. I think kind of expectations even went crazier than normal. And they saw maybe them at one of their highest levels. I don't think it's their highest level, but it was pretty darn solid for 40 minutes in those two games. And then took a step back. Maybe those growing pains just came a couple of weeks later than everybody expected, because when they played Duke, they turned it over too much. The athleticism of Duke's guards, whole team, really, the center, Williams, and obviously Paolo Banchero, that's an athletic crew. And that hurt Gonzaga. They were able to pressure. I don't think Gonzaga set up their offense where they wanted to. Drew Timme scored some points. He's going to score points, but he didn't score as much as he probably would have in a normal game because there was some rim protection. And same thing with Alabama. That guard line of Alabama is outstanding. And they showed it in that game. Jaden Shackelford was incredible. But the young kid, J.D. Davison, he is a player, and he hit the biggest shot in that game. And so if you're kind of looking for common denominators, the teams that give them trouble, it's those athletic guards that can really get into the Gonzaga guards and kind of change their offense a little. Rim protection inside to try to counter Drew Timme. But look at it this way. I mean, the Duke game came down the last couple minutes. Alabama had the Zags down 18, I believe, and the Zags were right there within 4, I think, in the final 4 or 5 minutes. So the margin of error isn't that great. The disparity isn't that great. In fact, I wouldn't mind if they played Duke 4 out of 7 somewhere down the road here in a NBA Finals. That would be would be great viewing, because I think those two teams are about as close as you can get.
Yeah, I would agree. The margin of error with those teams are very slim. I saw something on social media today. I think it might have been Twitter, where Cleveland State was supposed to play Duke, so there was an opening. Obviously, Gonzaga's game against UW was canceled because of COVID in the Husky program. Why couldn't we have rescheduled Gonzaga Duke for midweek now, getting them ready for Texas Tech? How difficult would that have been to do? And obviously, from a journalistic standpoint, you probably would have loved it.
Yeah, that like I said, anytime those two teams play, I'll gladly watch that. That was high level in Las Vegas. There was, I don't know how many pros are on the floor in that game, but probably 7 or 8 eventually. But yeah, that's probably a little too quick of a turnaround. Yeah. And then you factor in the Zags are in their finals week. They got a top 25 game down in Phoenix. They got to travel to that. And it's too bad the timing didn't quite work maybe a few days one direction or the other, because I really hope to see that game again. And I wouldn't mind seeing Alabama and Gonzaga again. I think the Zags are going to figure out some of those issues that bothered them in that game. And I'd like to see a rematch with both those clubs.
Before we move on to the next topic, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at BetRivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with BetRivers yet, now's the time because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. With basketball season tipping off, get in on the action by going to betrivers.com today or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Yeah, I would love to see a rematch with either one, as you mentioned. Obviously, you cover Gonzaga extremely closely. You've gotten to know Mark Few. You talk to him on a number of different topics for your coverage. But you also connect with other opposing programs and their coaches preparing for your coverage. Is there a coach or two that has stood out over the years for you that is either a breath of fresh air or they're just a good story and they give you lots of insight of what they need to do to prepare and beat Gonzaga?
Well, there's actually quite a few. Deal with the WCC coaches more often just because they play a double round robin, or at least 16 games now in the new schedule. So one kind of new face, one old face, Kyle Smith, when he was at San Francisco, was a treat to talk to. He knows the game inside and out. He has a system, and he's put it in at Washington State, and he's having great success there. And he has that analytics-driven mind to him. I think got passed down to Todd Golden, very much the same way. Bright guy. You can see what he's building there. He's one of the undefeated teams left in the country right now. What is there, 6 or 7, I think?
Yeah.
The style of play they do, the 3-ball. He's got a good big kid that transferred in. So I like talking to Todd. He shoots pretty straight with the Zags. Kind of miss Kerry Keating in that regard. He always would just tell you exactly what was on his mind. A real good guy to deal with. But Mark Pope is a very outgoing, gregarious guy. The coaches in the conference are really good. I got to talk to Stan Johnson at LMU, and he's doing a good job there. I think that team by the end of the year going to be one that nobody really wants to face in the conference tournament. He has put some life in that program, and I think they're on their way back up as well. And Lorenzo Romars is one of the all-time nice guys. There's no way around it. He's a good dude. Having some growing pains himself down there at Pepperdine. He loses Colby Ross and Kessler Edwards to the pros, but just a good guy to talk to as well.
Yeah, you mentioned some tremendous coaches there. Though WCC, if the season were to end today, it looks as if there would be 4 teams based on Ken Palm rankings, based on net rankings. It would be Gonzaga, BYU, St. Mary's, and USF in the NCAA tournament. Have you ever seen the league this deep?
Not at the top. It is pretty impressive what the league has done so far. I know BYU fell out of the rankings, but I think San Francisco is about to get in there if they stay undefeated. You've got a Zag team that's going to, I think, be in the top 5 all year. BYU has had a couple injuries with Baxter, with the big kid Harward. Those are tough injuries for them. They have Caleb Lohner inside. They've got one other big kid I think can handle the job, but that really cuts into their depth. Their guard line's very good, but they're playing a lot better defensively, I'd say, and they're so efficient offensively with Barcelo. They're going to be in there the whole year. I'd be surprised if they got 4 in, but I could see them getting 3 in. I think there's going to be the beat each other up in the conference a little bit. Maybe not so much with Gonzaga. But I think when the other teams play each other, they're going to absorb some losses. Won't hurt them as much as it would have in past years. If you're losing to a top 35 team on the road, that becomes a quality loss as opposed to a couple of years ago where it was, we're dropping out of the rankings, we're dropping out of the bracketology. So it's good for the league. I think you've got a few other teams that I think LMU is going to beat some of the top people. I think they will make an impact. And Santa Clara, when they're healthy, when Vrankic is back, and he's back now, they're good enough to beat anybody in that top four. So the depth of it and the top of it is as good as I've seen.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That depth of the league, and in particular the top four, is great. Obviously, I think Gonzaga has raised the bar of everybody else again amongst the league. But Jim, I appreciate the insight. I appreciate you coming on short notice. I look forward to having you on at some point again this year, and I always look forward to your great articles with the Spokesman Review newspaper in Spokane. So thanks again for joining.
No problem. Thank you, Dan.